Well, across the bridge in Wisconsin, another race that is heating up is the congressional race for District 7. District 7 represents counties like Douglas, Bayfield, and Ashland. Republican incumbent Tom Tiffany will face off with Democratic challenger Kyle Kilborn. The two met at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point for a debate. They agreed that more resources should be given to mental health and there should be more border security. But one issue they disagreed on is legalizing marijuana. Representative Tiffany said that he's concerned for marijuana being used as a gateway drug for drugs like fentanyl.
I have voted for a study, though, at the federal level, because we know that marijuana affects the brain, especially amongst young men. And I think we need to get more research for the states so they can make good decisions.
Meanwhile, Kilborn says Wisconsin should look to legislation passed in neighboring states as guidance.
Come out as an advocate for making sure that we have cannabis. Most of the states around us already have legalized it. I think at the federal issue, we need to look into what it would take to make it legal.
As for affordable housing, they also disagree. Representative Tiffany said that if they can reduce zoning regulations, housing could be made more affordable. Meantime, Kilborn said that the government needs to put a stop to corporate companies buying houses, flipping them, and then making a profit.